I'm violinist Tomás Cotik, visiting Buenos Aires, the city where I was born, on the 100th anniversary of the birth of my countryman Astor. Paradoxically, growing up here, I wasn't so interested in his music. I grew up more interested in Piazzolla's music when I was living abroad in Freiburg, Germany. His music became sort of a nostalgic reminiscence of what felt like home. A few years later, I would write a thesis about Astor's music, the new tango, and the influence of different kinds of music in that language. Those influences were the old traditional tango, called here Tango de la Guardia Vieja, jazz, klezmer, even some rock music, old Italian, slow folk melodies, and importantly, classical music. I'm thinking in particular of the music of Bartók, Stravinsky, Ravel, and Prokofiev. I later went to Toronto. I was doing my master's in music, and somehow I ended up trying to learn how to dance the tango. The teacher was a Pakistani immigrant, and my unsuccessful attempt wasn't his fault. Fast forward many years, I have played, arranged, and recorded a lot of Astor's music. I have 2 CDs with Naxos, and I'm very excited about the third one, this time with arrangements for solo violin and orchestra done by my colleague at Portland State University, Ken Selden. Piazzolla's music feels very close to me. Of course, in big part, there's the Argentine flavor, but equally important is a multicultural, cosmopolitan immigrant story that feels very unique and very close. The word tango is African in origin and was used as a synonym for the parties of African slaves in South America and Cuba. The characteristic rhythm of the tango can be found in African-rooted songs and dances throughout South America. The tango emerged in the last part of the 19th century on the Rio de la Plata's shores. It was Buenos Aires and Montevideo's music, the capitals of Argentina and Uruguay, places shaped by vast European immigration. Tango was the result of a mixture of cultures and nationalities. The most direct influences were the habanera, the tango andaluz, the milonga, and the candombe. Perhaps not surprisingly, Piazzolla's story, the sum of an improbable mix of experiences, people, places, and sounds, mirrors that of tango. Piazzolla was born in 1921 in Mar del Plata, a resort town on the coast of Argentina. His family moved to New York when he was 4 years old, settling in Greenwich Village, not the fanciest Manhattan neighborhood at that time. Young Astor grew up surrounded by other immigrants, including Jewish, Italian, and Irish families. Years later, he would talk of an atmosphere of danger and violence that forever tinged his music. His father gave him his first bandoneon when he was 8 years old, but at that time, Piazzolla was uninterested in tango music, which was a nostalgic presence every evening at home. However, to please his father, he started to learn to play the instrument. The Piazzollas tried to return to Argentina in 1921, but economic conditions back home were such that they returned 1 year later to Manhattan. This time, they settled in Little Italy, now surrounded by Polish, Russian, Romanian, and Jewish neighbors. Some of their music would become part of Astor's music. In Little Italy, Piazzolla took piano lessons with Bella Wild, a neighbor that happened to be a former student of Sergei Rachmaninoff. This was Astor's introduction to classical music. He became particularly fascinated by Johann Sebastian Bach's music, which, as arranged by Bella Wild, he played on the bandoneon. It was an experience that sparked Piazzolla's desire to be a musician. He also discovered Cab Calloway and Duke Ellington, bands he heard outside of a club in Harlem. Jazz would remain an influence in his music throughout his career. When Astor was 16 years old, his family returned to Argentina for good. Back in Argentina, Piazzolla became increasingly in touch with the roots of tango through artists such as Pedro Lawrence, Pedro Mafia, Alfredo Gobi, Julio De Caro, Osvaldo Pugliese, Francini Pontier, Argentino Galván, Miguel Caló, and Horacio Salgán. From 1938 to 1944, he played in and wrote arrangements for the orchestra of bandoneonist and composer Aníbal Troilo, an essential figure in tango history. At the same time, beginning in 1940, he studied with Argentine composer Alberto Ginastera, analyzing the music of Stravinsky, Prokofiev, and Bartók. He also studied piano and conducting. Although he was arranging and playing tango for a living, Astor's own compositions were classical. In 1954, he won a scholarship to go to Paris to study with the famous French composer, conductor, and pedagogue Nadia Boulanger. She was the teacher of Aaron Copland, Elliot Carter, Virgil Thomson, and Philip Glass, among many others. With Boulanger, Piazzolla studied neoclassical works and four-voice counterpoint, a technique that would profoundly impact his own music. While Piazzolla thought that his destiny lay in classical music, his teacher convinced him otherwise. In an anecdote that he would recall throughout his life, it was Boulanger who, after persuading him to perform one of his tangos, stopped him just after a few bars and told him, "This is beautiful, this is the true Piazzolla, do not ever leave him." While in Paris, Piazzolla would record some of his compositions featuring jazz pianist Marshall Solal. He also experienced the profound impact of hearing Jerry Mulligan's octet. And upon his return to Buenos Aires, the sum of all these experiences from New York to Buenos Aires, Paris, and back resulted in the formation of the Octeto Buenos Aires, an ensemble that marked a new era in tango. As a performing artist, Piazzolla worked in his ensembles with top musicians from different kinds of music, and he was influenced by so-called popular as well as serious music. His music, the Tango Nuevo, transcends categories. It is for the most part instrumental and not for the dance floor. His compositions were precisely written down, but with room for interpretation. In a Lintonian fashion, he wrote with specific players and ensembles in mind, rearranging his pieces several times as needed for different ensembles. Piazzolla's Nuevo Tango still contains some of the canyengue character of the old traditional tango, a playful, charismatic, and provocative way of walking and dancing associated with the compadritos. The compadritos were men who resided in the arrabales, the rough outskirts of Buenos Aires. Reputed to be macho but likable scoundrels, they hung out on Buenos Aires streets, often carrying knives, avoiding work, and living for woman and tango. Piazzolla's music retains other defining qualities such as mugre and camorra, in English filth, fight and trouble, characteristic elements of the tango. His compositions are often very rhythmic, full of accents, with emphasis on each note, and they have a sense of swing. The melodies can be fragmentary and disjunctive, producing at times aggressive, provocative, and powerful characters. At other moments, Piazzolla's lyrical melodies evoke Italian opera, with meditative, elegiac, romantic, passionate, and at times melancholic music with a rather free approach to tempo. Piazzolla ascribed his distinctive 3-3-2 rhythm to the klezmer music he heard growing up. That rhythm was already present in the tango orchestras from the 1930s and 1940s, but Piazzolla developed and varied it. Harmonically, Piazzolla often adds 7s, 9s, and 11s to traditional chords. He uses extreme dissonances, polytonality, atonal effects, and jazz cadences. He also adds color notes to the chords that give an unstable character or create an impressionistic atmosphere. The violin was one of the original instruments in tango, present in the groups playing in the bordellos around the early 1900s and later in the orquestas típicas. Piazzolla's music reflects the noises of the street of the megapolis of Buenos Aires. In his music, the violin has a protagonist role, and he includes and expands the tango effects and percussive effects used by the violinists of the orquestas típicas. In Spanish, they are called jeites. Those are not written down in the music often. It's up to the violinist to decide which specific effect to use and to improvise a specific rhythm. Lija or chicharra, in English sandpaper or cicada, is done behind the bridge, very close to the tailpiece on the cloth part of the D string, holding the bow like this. For tambour, in English drum, we place the middle or ring finger between the third and fourth string, with the fingernail touching the G string and then doing a pizzicato. Doing some appoggiaturas by rolling more fingers of the right hand can replicate the effect of a snare drum. Golpe de caja, or box slap, is done with the fingers or the hand on the box of the instrument. You can do it with the second and third finger right here, with the hand on the side of the instrument, with the fingers, or even with your wedding ring. The latigo, or in English whip, consists of quick ascending glissandi in one or two strings, and it's done from and to an undetermined pitch. Sirena, in English siren, is a dying away of the sound. It's achieved by doing a slow downslide on two strings, and it can be preceded by a quick ascending glissando. Arrastre, in English drag, is an anticipation of an important note. It's done with a glissando and a crescendo going from slow to fast with the bow up to the main note. On the piano, it would be something like this. On a string instrument, the rhythm in tango is not meant to be played precisely. There's a lot of push and pull. We play very strong downbeats, which allows for some improvisatory rhythmic freedom throughout the bar. A lot of times we also elongate the first of equally written notes and then compress the following ones. In that sense, a rhythm that is written like this could be played In Piazzolla's music, the instrumental solos expanded in length and complexity. Writing down the improvisations done by the musicians in his ensemble is really tricky. On one side, those solos are meant to be slightly changed every time. On the other hand, it's difficult to notate down their unique swing. performing so many arrangements for violin gave me an opportunity to use my own musical voice to explore in depth this music that I feel so closely related to. Piazzolla revolutionized the genre with his Tango Nuevo, which incited stern oppositions from the musicians of the old traditional tango for years to come. 100 years after his birth and 30 years after his passing, his music is performed worldwide by musicians from all different cultural backgrounds in different settings. It still sounds fresh today while having become a classic, and it is one of the many examples of the enriching process of immigration and their unique and beautiful merging of cultures.